What are the 11 badges of fraud, and why do they matter in the Providence versus LuLaRoe lawsuit? For the purpose of this explanation, I will be using defendant for LuLaRoe and debtor. A transfer made with the actual intent to hinder, delay, or defraud a creditor is a fraudulent transfer. The other, a constructive fraudulent transfer, occurs if you make a transfer without receiving reasonably equivalent value in exchange for the transferred asset, and you are left with inadequate assets to pay your debts as they become due. How does the judge determine if you had actual intent to hinder, delay, or defraud a creditor? The judge cannot read your mind. So California lists 11 badges of fraud. The more that are present, the more likely that your transfer was a fraudulent transfer. The badges matter in this lawsuit because plaintiff has invoked them in an effort to force defendant to provide financial records involving money and or assets that defendant may be attempting to hide in an effort to avoid paying the debts they owe. Furthermore, Providence alleges that LuLaRoe is engaging in enough fraudulent behavior, the badges, to ask the court to intervene on behalf of plaintiff to ensure LuLaRoe stops trying to hide their money and or assets. Assuming defendant had transferred money and or assets away from themselves, the badges attempt to find the intent behind the transfers by asking the following questions. Was the transfer to a defendant insider? Did defendant maintain control or possession after the transfer occurred? Was knowledge of the transfer exposed or kept under seal? Had defendant been threatened with a lawsuit prior to said transfer? How many assets did defendant keep as opposed to how many did they transfer? Did defendant leave before they could be served but after the transfers occurred? Did the defendant hide money and or assets? If the defendant sold off assets, was the amount of money they received a reasonable amount for said assets? Did the defendant become insolvent after the transfers? What was the timeline of when the transfers occurred versus when the substantial debt occurred? Did defendant transfer business assets to a lienor, who then transferred the assets to a defendant insider? Effectively, plaintiff just announced that they don't trust LuLaRoe to be honest about their financial solvency. Moreover, they believe in their argument so strongly that they took it to the judge. Only the judge can decide on the intent behind the creation of shell companies and the transfer of assets. Until then, we wait.
Kool-Aid, 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 Kool-Aid.